We've already heard tremendous things about what Mike gave to the community and the many important interests in his life. But the most important part of his life to him and to all of us is family. And so our last two speakers will be his daughter Linnea and then his wife Shelley. So Linnea.
Hey everybody. Okay, I'm gonna have to take these off. So many people have been kind enough to support me and love me and help me in my becoming of a person. And I see so many of you out here. And of all these people, Michael Miron is in a class all his own. One of my earliest memories of him was a tender one. It was shortly after he and my mother had separated. The two of us were in their house on the Eastern Shore one night, dipping hard-boiled eggs into different colored bowls of water and food coloring in preparation for Easter. And he began to cry. His 3-year-old daughter asked him, "Daddy, why are you crying?" Because he said, "It feels like no one loves me." Confused and with a furrowed brow, I said a bit sternly, "But Daddy, I love you." And we took it from there. As my Uncle David said, he called me little stuff, and he was big stuff. A pair of kindred spirits moving through the world. A little boy from Philly whose early years were marked by trauma, taking the hand of a little girl who adored him. The experiences he didn't get to have as a child, he created with me. Mine was a dad longing for joy, fun, adventures, exploration of new places. I won the childhood jackpot. We rode roller coasters and threw ourselves down water slides with reckless abandon. He loved those terrifying slides that are nearly vertical. I would watch with amazement as he would cross his arms over his chest, torpedo down the slide, skid across the water with a tremendous skipping splash, all the while with a huge smile on his face. He meticulously built me an intricate wood-shingled Victorian dollhouse. I made him a screwdriver from a piece of metal and some wood I chiseled in junior high shop class. He presented me with jewelry boxes and window ornaments he had made in the cellar with soldering material and sheets of stained glass. I gave him a leather key ring that I cut, treated, and stamped with MIKE for his car keys. He was pure magic when his hands came into communion with anything edible, and he fed me his creations. And I made him a glazed ceramic trivet for his offerings of soul food to rest on as we shared our meals. For 10 years, I lived in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania with my mother. And during the school year, I would be with my dad in Annapolis for a weekend every 3 weeks or so. He would send me postcards if he was traveling, and greeting cards of paintings of Vermeer's girls or Degas ballerinas to tell me what was going on in his life. We were pen pals at the end of the golden era before computers replaced handwritten correspondence. Those tangible pieces of his love and desire to connect and share himself with me when we weren't together, I saved all of them. In one of his cards, he writes to his 10-year-old daughter that Greg is out of town on a long trip and you're not here either. I really miss my two best friends. We explored China with that lifelong best friend, Greg Segretti, when I was 13. It changed my narrow worldview entirely. My mind opened up in awe and wonder and excitement. We strolled the Great Wall, crossed over Tiananmen Square, gazed at languid water buffalo from riverboats, and stood among the terracotta warriors of Xi'an. We bought exotic treasures, antique furniture, pearls and jade, old coins, little broken off pieces of that Great Wall that we pocketed to surround us back home. He asked the Chinese to bring him their spiciest of sauces, spread them on our meals until tears streamed down his beet red cheeks and sweat began to bead on his forehead. And he and Greg and I laughed and laughed and laughed. Just us chickens. One afternoon, he wanted to rest for a bit in the hotel room, but I was bursting with adrenaline from the energy of Hong Kong, pulsing right outside our high-rise window. We had just arrived, and he let me go explore that great city on my own, before the era of cell phones. He trusted me, and he believed in me, and that blossomed into a confidence in myself that was grounded in a deep appreciation and awareness that he was allowing me to go to those edges to test them for myself. And so I wanted to be good for him. And then I came to discover in those moments what it meant to just be good for myself and to aspire to stay in that place. And I always returned to him okay, better than okay. A more alive, vibrant, experienced, wiser, expansive, open-minded, open-hearted, grateful human being who couldn't wait to tell her dad what she saw and what she did and who she met, always with gratitude, knowing. From the knowing of the integral part he played in creating those moments for her. And after China, we went on to have many more overseas adventures with Greg, Christina, Will and Sienna Scott, John and Noreen Rice, and so many other fellow adventurers. Dad took the same approach with learning in the classroom too, always offering up the world, options, really quality ones, yet he was so understated about it, never pushing, never forcing, never telling me in which direction I should go. Watching me to see where I gravitated and trusting my choices and what felt right and good to me. I went to the local Montessori school at a very young age with Charlotte Bird, whose little girl Josephine is now part of that family 35 years later. And Charlotte tells me peeing in the same tiny little toilets in the same tiny little bathrooms. In 1992, Dad offered up a change from the public school system of my elementary and junior high years, so I moved in with him, and Severn became my home for 9th through 12th grade. And for me, those 4 years were among the sweetest of our times together. From a young age, I was curious about working and earning money like the grown-ups in my life. I noticed that grown-ups seemed to have more freedoms than the kids my age. But at 13, I was too young to be hired into the workforce. I loved being around my dad, so we decided that I would join the family business. He put me behind the counter of the Eastport Shell Station and handed me one of his red Shell Station logo polo shirts, a men's medium. I was 13, but I looked 9. The short sleeves draped down near my wrists, and the tucked-in shirt was so long that I had to keep checking to make sure it wasn't coming out of the bottoms of my shorts. But no matter, I was in heaven. Ringing up customers, buying gas, a Snapple iced tea, and a pack of Newports. Quizzical sailors regarded me with cocked heads as they uncomfortably took their cigarettes from my tiny, tiny hands. While I gazed fondly out the window at my dad walking out of the bays, wiping his hands on a rag, preparing to flirt with the steady stream and captive audience of pretty women at the pumps, or to exchange information about local politics with friends and neighbors. We made a good team. I asked him why customers kept asking me about these things called child labor laws. And he would laugh and say, "But you're so much better at this than the adults that work for me." Those summers turned to fall. He would make me breakfast before school each morning. He packed my lunches. He drove carpool with my friend Ashby's mother, Karen Walsh. Then he went to the Shell station and repaired cars, managed the business's books, oversaw his team of mechanics and tow truck drivers, talked to distributors, and put out the daily fires that come with running a busy and popular sole proprietorship in a tourist town. He would come home in the early evening, grit and oil under his nails and smear it on the front of his shirt, wash up and proceed to make homemade fettuccine alfredo, crab cakes, steaks, steamed artichokes, manicottis, salad with sliced star fruit, a varied menu for me and my friends who started to realize that the always welcoming kitchen on 6th Street, what the always welcoming kitchen on 6th Street was turning out. As Ashby said to me recently, "Hello, best dinners ever." Later in the evenings, Dad would descend into the cellar to do laundry and iron the pleats of my school uniform for the following day while I did my homework. He was a single working dad by choice, and he was so damn good at it. He was in his own personal flow, and it gave him such joy to see me flourishing under his care in my new life at my new school. The little boy from Philly was healing his own wounds in the most beautiful and generative of ways. On the weekends, he would invite his dear ones into the fold and effortlessly create dinner parties filled with storytelling, affection, sweet silliness, laughter, and culinary delight. I truly can't recall a time when he made a less than delicious meal, or when an evening was marked with an average ambiance. It was his genius. It was poetry in motion, and it was unfailing. Through these congregations, year after year, he brought together an exquisite tribe of souls who came to become my aunties and uncles, chosen family. I would sit at the table all those years and observe how some friends and lovers would come and go, some through breakups, some through death, and many of you have stayed for decades. I see you here today, and I feel a warm glow inside me that I've never felt before. As I told my friend Jess the other day, I'm starting to understand why people say they enjoy getting older. It's because of this, the experiences of the evolution and deepening of life's relationships. So speaking of getting older, it was at the seasoned old age of 15 that I made the difficult decision to leave the family business. I was ready for less grease and more sophistication. At 16, I was so excited to be given a job down the street at the Chart House. I wore floral dresses, greeted people, and walked them to their tables in the historic boathouse, which had been the primary boatyard for John Trumpy. And I was bored to tears. I asked Kevin Gersandi, the general manager, to relocate me to a different division of the workplace. Kevin skeptically put me behind the raw bar. He handed me an oversized white chef's jacket, probably also a men's medium, and told me to pair it with navy khakis and brown loafers that I didn't mind ruining with food stains. I made clams, casino, and shrimp cocktails. I shucked countless oysters and lay them over ice with lemon wedges. I would come home late at night, my hands and legs weak with exhaustion, and greet my beaming father with bits of seafood under my nails, crusty cream of crab soup splashed across my front, and I loved it. I had found a perfect hybrid of my dad's passions, making food and getting the hands messy in service to others, tourists and locals alike, East Puerto Rican style. I was my father's daughter, wanting to be like him. and feel close to him through my efforts in the world. Once I left his home to create my own life, when I returned after a longer than usual absence, he would jokingly greet me with, "Ah, the prodigal daughter returns," to let me know it had been a while. But so often, I would hear him proudly tell people, "I wish I had 10 more just like her." I don't. That lucky little girl got that father all to herself. And this 38-year-old woman still has all of that fatherly love with her as she keeps moving through this lifetime. And now as he holds hands with her in her heart, Michael Francis Miron embodied this beautiful, paradoxical mix of rugged, masculine practicality, using his hands to fix whatever was broken, or to create something new and pleasurable in service to others, while also possessing a sensual love of beautiful objects and beautiful, good people. Shortly before he died on September 1st, just as a couple of friends walked out of our home after a visit with him, he lay in his hospital bed in the middle of the living room, where he had created a life of laughter and love over the past 35 years. And he began to weep in that struggling, eyes squeezing shut kind of way. His little girl, now a grown woman, sat by his side, and instead of asking her daddy why he was crying, she wept with him and held his hand. He was deeply sad, and she understood why. He said to her, "Sweetie, friends are so important. They are so important." I nodded and told him I hoped someday to have the quality and abundance of kinships I'd witnessed in the weeks leading up to his passing. It was inspiring, humbling, and bittersweet to watch the roles reverse now, to see the caretaker have no choice but to be cared for, with such presence and concern by his tribe, his brother David, and his partner in life's great love, Shelley. To all of you in the room, to the ones who couldn't be here, and especially to Shelley, thank you, and bless you for loving and caring for my father over the years, especially in his final and most desperate time of need this summer. There is no doubt in my mind that after that night in 1981, he never again felt that nobody loved him. The cocoon of sweet support that enveloped him in our home touched him, touched me, and touched Shelley more than you know. Turn that off. Okay.
Not ours, I don't think.
Speak loud. Is there any mic on? Oh, not now? Okay. The mystical poet Rumi said that grief can be the garden of compassion. Grief was a painful childhood companion to my father. It came in the sharpest of ways through the death of his mother, whose soul I imagine he is dancing ecstatically with right now. Dad beautifully and skillfully used his carried grief to make heart-to-heart connections over and over again throughout his lifetime, often in the subtlest of ways when it doesn't dawn on you until afterwards. That alchemy of grief, transformed into kindness and care for the other, was elevated to a higher level of expression in this little corner of the world that was so apparent these weeks. It makes my heart overflow with pride that my dad got it right in this lifetime. He lived and was the embodiment of Rumi's message. He put it into form in his own and with those who crossed paths with him. And now we are all experiencing the grief that surfaced through his departure from this reality that we're all in together right now. I can feel the compassion blossoming in our shared garden and the heightened care and deeper connectedness we, as part of Mike Miron's tribe, have for one another. And it wells up in us and spills into the rest of the larger world, to people who didn't even have the good fortune of knowing him. But that's him we're channeling, and we and those other souls are feeling. And so on and so on. Thank you all, you angels. And thank you, Dad. I love you. I almost walked away with this.
Yeah, and that would have done something to your dress. Sorry. Well, I just want to say before Shelley speaks that at the end, Linnea said that Dad got it right. There's the proof that Dad got it
Isn't that the truth? Isn't that